Hello, this is Kristi Rohtsalu, the author of Logic-of-Finance.com blog. Today I am pleased to comment the 2011 EU-wide bank stress testing exercise as a risk capital specialist. Among others, my analysis reveals that based on the very same arguably not stringent enough stress test scenario, at least 4 banks that have been declared as perfectly healthy basically failed the test, including 2 of the very large players. Based on the preliminary assessment, 10 more so-called healthy banks should have been put on watch. In addition, from those 16 banks already declared as on watch level, at least 9 more effectively failed. Before going to the details of the analysis behind this conclusion, I'd like to say that I very much appreciate all the work done by the EBA, local regulators, and the few true professionals in banks. As a former risk capital analyst, I believe I have a fairly good idea of what an effort it may have been to put all those numbers together. Especially welcomed is the disclosure of the data, which is very interesting for a banking analyst. Yet the generally weak standing of many European banks in terms of high leverage and reliance on wholesale funding, combined with the unfolding sovereign debt crisis in Europe, clearly limits the banking authorities in terms of what they can and cannot say publicly. As you may have noticed, they remain extremely modest when naming the specific banks, for example, meaning that the analysts have to do their homework. They can use, among others, the data and the information provided. Still, together with the stress test results, the EBA sent some rather important messages to the banks and other financial market participants. First, weak banks, no matter if indicated by the official stress test results or not, have to take corrective actions, and better soon. Progress will be monitored carefully. Secondly, banks have to be ready for disclosing more data. Thirdly, as the differences in banks' internal risk assessments cannot be much longer ignored, a review of risk models and methodologies is about to follow. This third point probably sounds innocent enough for those not familiar with the details of capital adequacy framework and risk modeling. But the opposite may well be true. The review of risk models and methodologies may easily become one of the major challenges for the banking industry, both in terms of workload and in terms of the additional capital needed, especially if the bank hasn't been conservative in its risk assessments. When it comes to the stress test results, then I should say that the communication of them and the first look to the calculated capital ratios provides a biased, if not misleading, picture about the health of European banking sector. Obviously, the bias is towards being more optimistic and trying to assure markets that the industry in general is in a reasonably good standing. Consider, for example, the following emphasis of the EBA. According to the scenario, GDP would fall 4% from the baseline. The scenario includes haircuts and increased provisions for sovereign stress, that are in line with the solutions to the debt crisis currently being discussed. The stress test methodology and methodical assumptions were conservative. Furthermore, the quality assurance process led to the substantial revisions of the preliminary results provided by the banks. Perhaps most importantly, the adverse scenario loss rates in each of the 2 years were equivalent to those that we saw in 2009. The high level of provisions has been coupled with a considerably reduced profitability, net interest income and pre-provision income being roughly 1/3 lower than the 2009 equivalent levels. The main explanation to the rather low number of failing banks is that the banks and governments did take actions before the stress test by announcing bank restructuring plans and raising equity. Let's not argue about those assertions right now. Let's just suppose for a moment that the scenario really was severe enough and the analysis methodology reasonably conservative. The point I'd like to make here is that the scenario isn't the main issue. Before continuing, I have to apologize for those who don't like details, as it's going to be a bit technical. Yet I do think that understanding the following is very important and may save you from several wrong conclusions. For introduction and explanation to those who don't know about Basel II, the current capital adequacy framework for banks, let's remember what the stress test was all about. In this exercise, it was tested if a bank's core Tier 1 capital ratio remained above 5% in defined adverse scenario for 2011 and 2012 or not. If it didn't, the bank failed the test. The core Tier 1 capital ratio itself is calculated as the division of the so-called core Tier 1 capital and the risk-weighted assets. The definition of core Tier 1 capital is given by Basel II regulatory framework. Basically, it is ought to consist of common equity and retained earnings, from which certain deductions are being made. Risk-weighted assets basically represent the asset side of a bank's balance sheet, where assets are weighted for risks. Most of the banks apply advanced risk measurement approaches, where they calculate risk-weighted assets by themselves. During the stress testing exercise, the banks simulated their profit-loss statements for the given scenarios in order to recalculate core Tier 1 capital number, as well as re-estimated the risk-weighted assets based on the revised internal risk assessments for the scenario years 2011 and 2012. As you can see, there are three crucial quality checks when judging about the stress test results. First, if the simulated profits and losses were reasonable and conservative enough. Secondly, if banks' internal risk estimates for calculating risk-weighted assets were reasonably conservative. If they were not, the number of risk-weighted assets is smaller than it should be, and capital ratio looks better. Thirdly, what is included in the core Tier 1 capital? Is it all actually loss absorbing? I believe that the profit and loss calculations will receive enough attention by the others, so I will leave them for now. To illustrate how to charge on risk-weighted assets, let's consider the example of Deutsche Bank, one of the largest banks in the stress testing exercise, with the total assets amounting to 1.9 trillion euros as of at the end of 2010. I have to admit that this choice is not purely random. From this graph of the 10 largest banks by total assets, I see that at the starting point the bank may actually be less well capitalized compared to its peers. Look at the red dot. It indicates that the core Tier 1 capital for Deutsche Bank, when divided by the bank's total exposure, is lower than the same indicator for the others. The black numbers in this table are from the official results of the stress testing exercise. Importantly, we see that the core Tier 1 capital ratio for the banks is sound at the starting point and remains above the defined pass criterion by the end of 2012. Blue numbers are various additional indicators for complementing the regulatory core Tier 1 capital ratio. What stands out is the extremely high leverage ratio, as core Tier 1 capital forms less than 2% of the total assets and less than 3% of the total exposure. But both numbers look very low by any standard. In short, here is what those additional indicators urge us to ask. Why the total exposure is so much lower than the total assets? Is the risk-weighted assets figure conservative enough, given that risk-weighted assets form less than 1/3 of the total exposure? Given the aforementioned, isn't the core Tier 1 capital ratio far too optimistic? And if it is, well, then the conclusion of the stress testing exercise is probably not valid for the very same not stringent enough scenario. Regarding the composition of Core Tier 1 capital, I'd like to draw your attention to one of the limitations of the Basel II capital adequacy framework that effectively makes the current Core Tier 1 capital ratio a less suitable, if not an useless, criterion for deciding if a bank has failed or passed the stress testing exercise. Namely, the Basel II capital adequacy framework allows certain parts of the deductions from capital base to be made from the lower quality capital. This means that the Core Tier 1 capital still includes elements that are not loss absorbing. For example, there are included 50% of the expected losses over provisions and 50% of the securitization exposures not included in risk-weighted assets. We may well call it an illusory part of Core Tier 1 capital if you wish. For illustration purposes, we have made an example for Deutsche Bank. Again, the black numbers are taken from the official stress test report. The blue numbers below are our calculations. As you can see, after adjusting for the so-called illusory part, the Core Tier 1 capital becomes 24.1 billion euros instead of the reported 30.4 billion. The Core Tier 1 capital ratio as of at the end of 2010 would be 7%, down from the reported 8.10%. By the end of 2012, it would decline to 5.3%, which means that the bank should be included into the watch list. In addition to that, an appropriate treatment of the deferred assets and minority interests may reduce the true loss-absorbing Core Tier 1 capital even further. Last but not least, I cannot finish this example without presenting you the comparison of coverage ratios between Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank, another major German bank. A coverage ratio shows how much specific provisions have been made for the defaulted assets. What stand out are clearly lower coverage ratios for Deutsche Bank. This urges us to ask if the bank has made enough loan loss provisions so far, or there are unpleasant surprises in the pipeline. Of course, here we also have to compare the underlying credit portfolios of both banks before concluding anything final. But in one sentence, I would be very wary about the conclusions of 2011 stress testing exercise. And to summarize, I recommend you to look at the various indicators for assessing the appropriateness of risk-weighted assets. Correct the Core Tier 1 capital number for the deductions that have been made from the total capital but haven't yet been made from the Core Tier 1 capital. Compare and analyze coverage ratios of various banks. That concludes the presentation. Thank you for your attention. Next, you can go to the website of logicoffinance.com and for a fairly reasonable price get the presented analysis for all of the banks in 2011 EU-wide bank stress testing exercise.
Arctic shelf comes crumbling around. We gotta reap the heat that we have sown. Royal Bank has gone to hell. Oh, Flair of Scotland, I hope we never see the like again.